How to stay connected when friends move away or pass on. Have you ever sat in your living room, holding a cup of tea, and suddenly realized how quiet everything has become? Not just the room, but your world. The phone doesn't ring as often. The laughter that used to echo from the backyard barbecues or Sunday get-togethers feels like a memory from another life. And sometimes, even when people are around, there's a deep sense of absence, of someone who used to be there and now simply isn't. Staying connected becomes harder as we age. Not because we don't want to connect, but because life shifts. Friends move away to be closer to their children or grandchildren. Some pass on after long, beautiful lives. Others drift apart, not out of anger, just distance, health, or time. And so here we are, sitting in that quiet, asking ourselves, how do I hold on to the feeling of being part of something when so many of my people are no longer here? This video is a heart-to-heart about that very question. We're going to talk about how to stay connected, even when old friends move away or pass on. Because you deserve to feel seen, heard, and remembered. And believe it or not, staying connected is not about having 100 friends, it's about meaningful moments with even just one. Let's start with something simple but powerful, reaching out, even if it's been a while. Sometimes we wait for others to make the first move. We don't want to feel like a burden. We think, oh, they're probably busy, or it's been too long, I don't want to make it awkward. But let me tell you something, loneliness thrives in silence. And often, the other person is sitting there thinking the same thing. One of my neighbors, Dorothy, she's 78, recently picked up the phone and called a friend she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Her voice trembled when she told me about it, but you should have seen the smile on her face after. They talked for 2 hours. Laughed about old times. Cried a little too. And now? They call every Sunday evening. Dorothy said to me, I thought she forgot me. Turns out, she just thought I did. So if there's someone you've been thinking about, a neighbor you used to chat with, an old coworker, even a cousin you haven't spoken to in ages, send that message. Make that call. It doesn't have to be long or fancy. A simple, I was thinking about you and wondering how you've been can unlock a door that's been closed too long. Another way to stay connected is by creating new circles, yes, even now. A lot of us feel like we've missed the boat. Like friendships are something that belongs to youth, or to big families, or to those always out and about. But that's just not true. Connection has no expiration date. I've seen people in their 70s join book clubs at the library and end up building deeper friendships than they ever had in their 30s. One gentleman I know, Tom, started going to a small community garden just to get some fresh air. 2 years later, he's sharing tomatoes and laughter with folks who feel like a second family. The key is to show up, even if you don't know anyone. Say yes to invitations, even if it feels a little scary. That first moment, walking into a room, sitting beside someone new, it's never easy. But it's in those moments that new bonds are born. Don't wait for perfect timing or perfect words. Just be present. Be curious. Ask questions. Compliment someone's scarf. Offer help picking up a dropped napkin. Those little things open hearts. Of course, there will still be moments when grief weighs heavy, when the loss feels too fresh to imagine starting over. And it's okay to feel that. It's okay to honor the ones who are no longer here. They mattered. Their absence matters too. But let their memory be your reason to keep going, not your reason to stop. Because I promise you, if they were still here, they'd want you to keep living. Not just surviving, but living. When my friend George lost his wife of 48 years, he told me, for a while, it felt like the world turned gray. But then he joined a local walking group, not because he wanted to, but because his daughter nudged him. And now, every Wednesday, he walks with 5 other seniors, all of whom have lost someone, too. They call themselves the soul survivors, and they walk, talk, and laugh more than they cry. He said, I thought I'd walk alone for the rest of my life. Turns out, I just needed to lace up and step out. So let's do the same. If today feels too quiet, too lonely, know that you're not alone in that feeling. And you don't have to stay stuck in it. The world hasn't forgotten you. There are still hands reaching out, waiting for yours. Sometimes, they just need to see that little wave, to know it's okay to come closer. You know, it's funny how some of the most meaningful connections don't always come from deep, years-long friendships. Sometimes, it's the person you share your morning coffee with at the park. Or the one you chat with at the checkout line. Small moments, tiny, passing exchanges, that remind you, you are still part of the world. That's something worth holding on to, especially when the people we used to share those moments with are no longer here. Let's talk about how to build connection in ways that feel real, not forced. Because I know what you might be thinking, I'm too old to make new friends, or I don't want to start from scratch again. But connection doesn't have to mean big social gatherings or reinventing your whole life. It starts with presence, showing up fully where you already are. One woman I met, named Lillian, started doing something I thought was just beautiful. She began sitting outside her front porch every afternoon at 4 o'clock. Nothing fancy. Just her, a cup of tea, and an extra chair. At first, no one came by. But after a week, a little boy riding his bike stopped to say hello. A few days later, his grandmother joined in. Over time, the neighbors began to wave. Some stopped for a few minutes. Some stayed longer. But that empty chair? It became an invitation. Not just for company, but for community. And the most powerful part? Lillian didn't go looking for anyone. She just made space. So here's a thought. What kind of empty chair can you put out in your life? Maybe it's volunteering at the library or the community center. Maybe it's offering to help in the church kitchen. Maybe it's writing a kind comment online in a group you're part of. In a world that can feel so distant, even the smallest kindness is a bridge. Now I also want to talk about staying connected to yourself, especially when others feel out of reach. Because the truth is, before we can feel truly close to others, we have to feel close to our own hearts. There's something deeply healing about journaling. Not the kind where you write perfect sentences or worry about grammar. Just a notebook and a pen, and the willingness to say, here's what I missed today, or I'm proud I got out of bed, or even I feel lonely and I'm not sure why. When you do that, something shifts. You begin to hear your own voice again. You begin to feel like you again. And that's the part of you that people connect to most, not the polished version, not the one that hides behind a smile, but the real, honest, living part of you. And once you start hearing yourself more clearly, reaching out to others feels less like work and more like a gift. Now, I want to acknowledge something tender. There are days when the grief is sharper than others. When birthdays come and the person you used to celebrate with isn't here anymore. When holidays feel more like reminders of who's gone than celebrations of who's left. Those days are hard. But they're also sacred. You don't have to pretend they're not painful. You don't have to be strong all the time. In fact, allowing yourself to feel is one of the strongest things you can do. And one of the most loving. Some people light a candle. Some write letters to those who've passed. One gentleman I met named Harold takes his late wife's scarf on his walks. He said, I know it's just cloth, but it feels like she's with me. And honestly, who's to say she's not? Grief doesn't mean love ends. It just means love changes form. So if you're missing someone today, let that missing be part of how you connect. Share their stories. Laugh at the memories. Cry if you need to. And let someone in while you do it. Sometimes, that's how new friendships are born, right in the middle of shared loss. That brings me to something truly important, finding people who are in the same season of life as you. You'd be surprised how many people around you feel exactly the way you do, but no one's saying it out loud. They miss someone. They feel a little out of place. They wish someone would invite them to sit down and talk. So why not be the one who starts? It doesn't take much. Or would you like to grab coffee sometime, can open up a doorway. A smile in the elevator. A compliment on someone's earrings. It's not about being extroverted, it's about being open. And when you live with an open heart, something beautiful happens. The world begins to open up to you. You start to notice the kindness in strangers, the gentle nod from a neighbor, the quiet support of someone who remembers your name. And slowly, life feels less empty, less quiet, less alone. Because connection, at its core, is about noticing. About saying, I see you. And I'd like to know you. And you, my friend, are still so very worth knowing. There's something truly powerful in realizing that connection doesn't end when someone leaves your life. It simply asks you to find new ways to carry love forward. Sometimes, the best way to honor someone who's moved away or passed on is by living well in their memory. Let their spirit nudge you toward joy, toward laughter, toward the kind of days they would have wanted for you. You don't have to move on from them. You just have to keep moving, with them in your heart. I knew a man named Ernest, 81 years old. His best friend since childhood passed away 3 winters ago. They used to play chess every Thursday afternoon. When his friend died, Ernest kept the routine. Every Thursday, he'd sit at the park, set up the chessboard, and place a photo of his friend across the table. People would walk by, curious, and some would stop to play. Over time, Ernest ended up with a circle of new friends, all drawn in by that one quiet ritual. He once told me, I thought I was playing alone. Turns out, I was opening a door. You never know who's waiting behind the doors you open, intentionally or unintentionally. And sometimes, the people who fill those spaces aren't the ones you expect. Maybe they're younger. Maybe they come from a different background. Maybe they don't share your history, but they're eager to listen, to learn, to be there. Don't turn away from those connections just because they don't look like the ones you lost. Life has a funny way of surprising us with exactly who we need, even if it's not in the package we were expecting. It's also important to give yourself permission to say, I need connection. Not in a desperate way, but in an honest one. Because there's strength in admitting you want community. It means your heart is still alive, still reaching, still hoping. And that's something to be proud of. You can start small. Maybe it's a walk with a neighbor, a weekly lunch with someone new, a letter sent to an old friend, a visit to a local club or community gathering. You don't have to be the life of the party, you just have to show up with an open spirit. Because here's the truth, connection isn't about how many people are around you. It's about how seen you feel in their presence. You could have 100 acquaintances and still feel lonely. Or you could have one soul who truly listens, and suddenly, the world feels full again. So focus on that kind of connection. The kind that fills, not drains. The kind that comforts, not complicates. The kind that says, I accept you exactly as you are, and I'm glad you're here. And while we're here together, I want to remind you, you're not too old to begin again. Not too old to meet someone who lights you up. Not too old to find belonging. Not too old to matter. You are still becoming, even now. Your story isn't over because someone left your life. It just turned a page. And there's still so much worth reading ahead. So maybe today is the day you reach out. Or maybe it's the day you sit quietly and remember someone you miss, letting the tears fall if they need to. Maybe today is the day you walk into that art class you've been thinking about for months. Or finally reply to that message sitting in your inbox. Whatever it is, don't wait for the perfect moment. Make this moment the beginning. Because connection doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be honest, gentle, willing. And you already have everything it takes. If this message touched something in your heart, I'd love to hear about it. Share a memory, a name, or even a feeling in the comments. You never know, someone might read it and feel less alone themselves. And if you found this video helpful, go ahead and tap the like button. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking this journey together. There are more stories to tell, more wisdom to share, and more moments to remind each other, we're not alone. You belong here. You always have. And as long as you keep showing up, with kindness in your hands and a little hope in your pocket, the world will find its way back to you. Here's to staying connected, not just to others, but to yourself. Here's to love that lives on, even when faces fade. And here's to you, living your best, most meaningful life, one beautiful step at a time.